Quick outline, look at the flip gradual release responsibility. I'm going to focus on little formative assessment tools to sort of do scaffolding differentiation assessments to sort of make that that leap between you doing everything and the kids being able to sort of take the work and run with it instead. So scaffolds you can build, little strategies on how to do that. If you're coming to my session as well on gifted and talented, some of these might be sort of intertwined as well through that as well. So, essential question. How can flipped learning lead to student independence? And this is, as I said, something that Steve spoke about quite well in terms of students being able to do independent work. And you notice there's a lot of issues where he found an issue with one of his early career teachers that he was sort of looking at for his PhD they're not able to do collaborative work. They're really good for independent, but what about collaborative? So I've got a few strategies I think that might sort of work with that in terms of flipping that responsibility back over to the kids. So dovetail. John and Steve mentioned this as well. What's your why? And I actually had this in there already before they mentioned it. So I thought, okay, I won't take it out, even though they've already mentioned it. But what's your why as well? What are you trying to achieve? Okay, and what role do the kids have? Because I find with the release of responsibility, there needs to be some clearly defined roles of who does what. Okay, because if it's blurred, then there's shared responsibility, who's going to release what to who and when. So there needs to be a clear line of who actually does what in that room. Okay, one of my favourite, I love telling stories, and this is one of my favourites. Okay, one day, and again, this is one of those ones where I think it's been up on Snopes as being debunked, but I still love it anyway. It's a great story. One day, John F. Kennedy, he was touring NASA, and he stopped to talk to a man who was holding a mop. And the president asked him, "What do you do here?" Assuming he was the janitor. And the man said, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." He knows his role. He's not just a cleaner, not just, at the bottom of that food chain, bottom of the rung. There's an important link where everyone needs to be involved to make this happen. Okay? Without everyone doing their little job, adding up to everything, the whole thing's going to fail. Okay? One of my other favourite, I love monkeys, so obviously I'm going to put in a story about monkeys. One of my favourite books ever is called Company by an Australian author called Max Barry. If you're interested in psychology, analysing marketing behaviours in a funny sort of tone, Company's a great book. So imagine there are some chimps in a cage, okay, and a scientist pokes in a banana on a stick. The chimps try to grab it, but as soon as they do, the scientists electrify the floor, and all the chimps get an electric shock. Okay, keeps going on and on until the chimps learn that touching that banana equals an electric shock. So then the scientists start to take out one chimp and put in a new one, and put a banana in through the cage again. And before that monkey goes to grab that banana, it gets beaten up by everyone else because he doesn't want to get electrocuted. They don't want to get electrocuted. Okay? This keeps going on, keeps switching chimp one at a time until none of the original chimps are left. Then the scientist adds one more. When that new chimp goes for the banana, the others jump in, same as before. But why? None of them actually know what happens when you touch the banana. They just know touching it equals bad. So what kind of culture have you got that is sort of permeated through time that we need to sort of put a brake on? Okay, and in teaching business studies, the idea of resistance to change, the idea of inertia. People keep doing something until something comes up and stops, but people are going to keep doing it for a short period of time. So what I found as well when I started flipping a few years ago was there was a lot of resistance. I wouldn't say a lot of monkeys, but a lot of resistance. With when I first heard about this many years ago, and I was working at a totally different school to where I am now, I said, "Can I flip?" And they said, "No, we don't want angry phone calls from parents saying why are they just watching videos? Why aren't they just learning what they need to learn to get whatever they need to get into uni?" So there was a lot of resistance. Okay, so shifting that, trying to break that why, trying to shift that why, was a bit hard, but the payoff was amazing when you start doing these little formative tools to actually show, okay, well, it's as John would always say. And as a lot of the keynoters always say, in any other session you go, it's not all about the videos. It's about what you do with the time you've got. Okay, it's not about the videos. So, off the dovetail back to the actual presentation. So gradual release. Has anyone never heard of the gradual release responsibility model before? Anyone never heard of it?
Oh, never.
Oh, never. Okay. On the actual slide deck, last year I actually wrote an article for the ASIL journal where it actually synthesizes. So it's in a lot more detail than this, obviously. So there's an actual hyperlink at the bottom of that slide when you go to it later on. Link to the article where it synthesises gradual release with flipped learning in a lot more detail than what we've got here. And I remember last year when I was presenting on something similar, a lot of people said that in Queensland a lot of these tools are blocked, so I really hope that they've been unblocked since then. I mentioned to a conference once, I was up on the Gold Coast 2 weeks ago for a geography teachers conference, and I started talking about Google Forms and XYZ and stuff. We're not allowed to use that at our school, it's blocked. I really hope that's been fixed. No? Alright. I'll just do a song and dance like a monkey at the front for the next 50 minutes then, I guess. I don't know. All this can be linked into Microsoft Teams, etc. as well. So there's no... I'm just looking at what I've used. However, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. So if you've ever heard of the gradual release responsibility model, it's basically a pedagogical model that aims to shift that cognitive load from you as a teacher over to the students. Now, this can take one lesson, can take a week, can take a term. This can happen across the whole year. Okay? There's no predetermined time frame here of this all has to happen in one lesson. You might be in a school where you've got a 30-minute class, a 30-minute period. I've heard of some colleagues where they have, I think, 7 or 8 30-minute periods during the day. Where, I know, when I heard that, I couldn't even begin to fathom, by the time they get in and get settled, what are you actually doing? Okay? We've got 75-minute periods. We've got 4 75-minute lessons. We used to have 6 50-minute lessons, and now we've moved to 4 75-minute lessons. And I find that works really well because you can actually get pretty much like a whole arc in that one lesson with this. You know, it doesn't have to take weeks because you don't see them very often either because you see them more in one hit. You don't see them 3 or 4 or 5 times a fortnight. You might only see them 3 or 4 times a fortnight. So I find it pretty good for getting that arc in. But with the flipped version, rather than I do it where the old version had the teacher, where they'd be up and just do the lecture, and I know the irony of this, but them coming up and doing the lecture and saying this is everything you need to know, and then by the time they get to maybe some group work, the bell's gone, go home, do some work at home, they've got no idea what's going on, come back to school, why's your homework not done? I didn't understand it. Oh well, we got to move on because we got no time, or else we're not going to meet our syllabus requirements. Okay, and repeat. So with the flip version, obviously, and again, it's not all about the videos. So I do use the videos a lot more though, particularly for business studies. Some of the concepts are very, very difficult to do sort of as a lecture. So particularly the financial one. So it does help the kids a lot more to have, like Steve said as well, the ability to look at a financial ratio and be able to rewind it and rewatch it and rewind it and rewatch it and rewind it and rewatch it and do the work activities themselves. So the focus lesson is still delivered by use of video. However, the responsibility's gone from you doing it for them to them doing it themselves. At home, the night before, the week before, however it is you structure your flip class. Okay? So with that one there, again, whilst the model that I use still mentions videos, it's not all about them. So the one that I'm going to focus on really for those scaffolds and the differentiation, etc., is this middle, the second step, which is the we do it together. Okay, where you have the teacher modelling, and this is really the start of when you do this is the stage when you do start releasing that responsibility. They've watched that video at home the night before, the week before, however it is you structure it. They've given you some data from that, and you've hopefully had enough time to analyse that data and look through it. And you're able then to provide some scaffolds for those kids to then be able to go down that path of being solely independent learners, okay, through those scaffolds. So this is what the bulk of it's going to be, the talk in terms of what tools you can use. So in this we do it phase. You've done the guided instruction via video. There's a question and answer session in class. So what I normally do is about 5 to 10 minutes of a quick debrief Q&A, because as we know from John, if you're going to end up doing a lecture after they've watched the video, then you might as well have just done a lecture and the whole thing's just fallen flat anyway. So if they've watched the video and then you end up doing a 1-hour lecture regardless, then what's the net gain? Okay? So I still incorporate about a 5 or a 10 minute sort of Q&A after that just to clear up any issues, things they still didn't understand. One of the things I'll look at and I love using is Cornell Notes because it does allow them to scaffold their questions that they do have. So when we do have that Q&A session, their questions are ready to go. They don't have to spend 20 minutes twiddling their thumbs going, I don't know what I don't know. So it's already there. And I've already seen them beforehand because they've taken photo of it and they've uploaded it to the learning management system as well. So I can sort of come pre-prepared because I am a teacher, but I'm also human and I don't know the answer to everything. So a bit of particularly when the kids, so what's this? And you're like Googling, and so I didn't hear you while you're, can you repeat? I didn't actually understand what you said. Can you repeat? I can't hear you, and you're Googling at the same time. Oh yeah, and you tell them the answer then. So that happens more than I like to admit. But we're human. So if you can save yourself some grief as well by getting this data beforehand, it makes your job a lot easier as well. And as we know from everyone's favourite overlord, John Hattie, that teacher credibility is the number one thing that students really feed off. So if they know you know what you're talking about, they will learn a lot better as well. Okay. So in that we do it phase. So this is, and we talk about relationships a lot. You've got the ability to freely move around the room. You're monitoring their progress. You're providing feedback. You're not anchored to the front, as I understand the irony here. Being anchored to the front, not moving around, providing feedback. This is what it allows you to do. So then in that you do it together, you're really able to do some really enriched collaborative things here. Okay? And you've actually got time now to give them proper feedback. And then finally in the phase is, then eventually, and again, this doesn't have to happen in one lesson, it can happen over a week, over a unit of work, for example, even if that unit of work goes over 2 terms or a semester or whatever it might be. In the end, eventually, you hit those higher order activities, okay? Because you've built up enough data beforehand to get those scaffolds they need. So when they start doing it alone, they're able to reach independence quicker. As Steve says, the idea of mastery a lot quicker as well. Okay, because you've taken away the need for them to learn the concepts at home with no guidance. Because now they learn it at school with your guidance. Because in the end, that's basically your job as a teacher. So for example, this is one of the independent things. So with my year 12s, okay, so by the end of doing the flip course or the unit on marketing, I then gave them this question here, very high order. There was a lot of issues with ACCC at this time in terms of how potent they actually are in holding businesses to account, and even today there's still some issues on how potent are any statutory bodies in keeping anyone in account in Australia anymore at all. So quick, they've done the course. I then let them do another inflip again, so basically refresh your knowledge of the Australian consumer law, ACCC, and a few things here. They're in straight out of the syllabus: deceptive, misleading advertising, price discrimination, implied conditions and warranties. Now in business studies, they've got 4 sections to their exam: multiple choice, short answers, a business report on a given stimulus, and then an essay where they have to integrate their own case studies. Okay, real or fake, they can make it hypothetical, but they need to put in case studies. So using at least 2 examples from the ACCC and consumer law, discuss the role. So a lot more higher order than just what does the ACCC actually do, explain what they do, but it's really, for or against. Are they actually good, or are they actually doing their job in making sure that consumers are protected from illegal business activities? So the students are able to look at things like the Shonky Awards, Nurofen getting sent to court by the ACCC for Nurofen for period pain, Nurofen for back pain, Nurofen for headache pain, even though it was all the same pain relief anyway. So they were able to bring that in because we've had that ability. I'm not going to go back through the slides because it'll be too many clicks. That whole arc from 5-minute video on what are consumer laws, and then using those scaffolds to then lead to this point here. Okay, and then with a single point rubric. And this is one thing I found a few years ago, and it changed my life in terms of reducing workload for marking for feedback. Okay, rather than marking every single thing the kid does, I just, at the end of an essay, for example, that question there, that's basically their success criteria. A lot of schools now use learning intention success criteria. That's what we do as well. Start of the lesson, this is what you're going to learn, this is how you're going to know you've learned it. So the 5 things I was going to look at was, is your argument actually clear? Okay, what was really good about it? What do you need to work on? Okay, the question was, use 2 examples. Did you use 2 relevant examples? Bit of feedback there, bit of feedback there if you have to. Research, they've got at least 3 sources in APA. It's at least 1 type page long. And again, the irony in communication, the grammar and formatting is correct. It contains correct course terminology, and it sustained logical and cohesive. There was a spelling error in that. So what are the actual little tools you can use? Okay, what are the actual tools you can use to get this data? What's the actual crux of this whole talk? I hope I've got to it. So, as I said, you need to have an active use of video, an active video watching. Okay, active video watching. The one thing that I love to do is embed the video, and again, I'm not very tech savvy in a way. I'll use tech quite a lot, but I'm not the best with tech. So something like Play Posit, I'll have no idea how to use, for example, or Edpuzzle, or whatever it might be. I just embed it into a Google form. I just embed the video into a form instead. And you can do that with Microsoft Forms as well. Okay, same deal. So it works the same way. And I'll show you an example of what sort of data you can glean from that later on. And then, as I said, I love using Cornell Notes as well because it really structures their notes, but also allows them to show their understanding in 3 different ways as well. So from the easiest to hardest way of understanding as well. So from dot points, questioning, to an actual coherent paragraph from those dot points as well. Okay? And this, as I said, gives you those scaffolds. So the bottom line, as John would say all the time, whatever you do at home with the video needs to be active. Okay? So Cornell Notes, if you've never seen Cornell Notes before, it's basically like a giant eye drawn, and of course I've got a video on how to take Cornell Notes, which I show the students at the start of the year as well. Okay? Very first thing I do at the start of the year, because kids, as I said, you know, I'm that scientist poking in that banana, trying to get, you know, the kids to change their culture of what's happening. Start of the year, they've never done flipping before. They come to me, show them how to do Cornell Notes. We watch the first video ourselves together. So the very first, you know, Business 101 video, we watch it together. I pause it every now and then, and I show them how to take notes properly. And then from that point onwards, they do the video themselves. So you have to learn how to watch a video. You know, it sounds, you know, simplistic, but you need to know how to watch a video properly. Okay. So for example, they do, and of course the kids have no questions. However, they put the topic up the top, dot points from the video along there. Okay. If they did have any questions that they still have, it'll be in that little column there. And it's anything from, I still don't understand what a micro business is as opposed to a small business, as opposed to a large business. Or it can be something a bit more meta in terms of how do we get that terminology? What root word do we even, you know, why do we have that root word for this legal issue in business, for example? Okay. And then they've got their coherent paragraph. Now we use Ideal. At our school, you might use teal or peel or petal or steel, or teal with 3 E's or teal with 2 E's or teal with an E and an A. And that's basically, and that, you know, that's, you can do any other way. Using those little dot points, I get the kids then to turn it into a coherent, structured paragraph. So if they did get an exam question, for example, that said XYZ types of businesses, they should hopefully have that recall of a couple of key terms. This is how I can string those terms together to make an actual coherent paragraph as well, though, afterwards. Okay. So as I said, there's a video on how to do Cornell Notes. Very simple. It's basically just a little giant uppercase I, but the vertical one's going a little bit more to the left there. So as I said, I use Google Forms. I do love using Google. I know that there's always some ethical issues with, you know, using any sort of thing. I don't understand that maybe why it's been blocked in a few schools in Queensland, the ethical issue behind it, the data collection privacy, I believe. So what I do is I embed, I embed the video into a Google Form for them. Okay. Now the downside is they can really be doing anything in the background. They can, you know, it doesn't have the ability of they go out of the browser and automatically stops for them and it pauses. This is where that relationship and trust you build with the kids comes in handy, where they know their high expectations and what is expected of them, so they're not going to sort of stuff around, which comes, again, as I said, from years of getting a relationship with the kids. So basically, I just collect their email address so I know who it is that's sending it to me. I've got to stop drinking coffees. My hand's not even moving then. I embed the video in there, and then when they press next, it takes them to a multiple choice quiz. I've not yet figured out how to get Google, and you can do this, but I've not yet figured out a way to get Google to auto-mark short answers. There is a way to do it. You type in a few keywords and it will auto-mark it for you. However, this auto-marks it for you. So this is the active side of it. However, they also do the Cornell Notes at the same time. So the active, because I can't pause the video when they go out of it, the active part of them watching the video for me is they do the Cornell Notes with it, and then there's a multiple choice quiz. And this is where that scaffold is. This is where I draw the scaffold from to then figure out at what point are they. This is basically a pre-test of sorts. Okay? And then that's photos the kids have taken, and they upload that to the assignment on Google Classroom later on. So I can actually get a bit of a look before and say, okay, well, this is exactly what I need to know. So that's the kind of data you get from there. So colour codes are for you. How many kids get it right? If you click on that, it'll tell you which kids exactly got it right, and they can reattempt this as many times as they want. Some of the quizzes I have only 2 questions. Some have about 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 multiple choice questions, depending on what kind of data I want and how much of a scaffold I want to build for them later on anyway. Okay. Another great Google add-on is Flubaroo. Has anyone used Flubaroo before? Beautiful. How do you use it? It's Pete, isn't it?
Yeah. No, just to help with the marketing.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's before Google would do its own thing. That's what I use before.
Yeah. Even though Google does do the auto-marking, I still prefer Flubaroo just for the sheer sort of the spreadsheet that it gives you. So rather than just seeing, I know Google does give you the spreadsheet as well, but I just like the way this one's set out a lot more. Obviously, this one's for commerce, so it tells you again a bit of a formative task in terms of how many kids got everything right. It automatically color codes in one big look and says, well, only 40% of people know what complaints against management. I don't even remember how the question was. The most common type of business entity in Australia is sole trader, but only 46% of the kids knew that. So that means that when we do have that 5-minute Q&A session before we start doing some group work and independent work, the very first thing we need to hit is make sure we go through the legal structures again. Okay, why do 46% of my kids still don't know that sole tradership is the #1 legal entity in Australia? Okay, or National Foods Limited, if it has the word limited after it, it means it's a public company. Again, 46% of the kids, only 46% of the kids knew that. So that means that grouped together, well, that whole chunk is one thing about legal structures. So on both ends of the spectrum, sole trader through to public. So that's what we'll focus on. So that gives me the ability to get scaffold and say, let's work through this again. Okay. However, then you've got, okay, well, 100% of people know what an entrepreneur is. I'm not going to spend a lesson doing that. I'm just going to we'll touch on it for a little bit and then we'll keep going on to something else. Okay. Obviously, the video itself, as Steve had said before, the video itself is a form of differentiation because they can watch, they can pause it, watch it, rewind it, rewatch it as many times as they want, and they can achieve mastery of knowledge at their own pace. I've got kids that email me months and months later saying they've rewatched the video and now they want to reattempt a question from months earlier. Can I have a re-go? I know it's not going to change my marks, sir, but can I still have a go at it anyway because now I want to have another crack? Yeah, but that's the point of this. It's amazing, good, beautiful. That's what we want. Another one I love using is YouTube end screens. Now this one here on a spectrum of easiest to implement to the hardest to implement. This one is on the end of the hardest to implement. It takes a lot more time, but once it's done, it's done. And what it does, and I made a dummy one up so it doesn't go for that long. Don't know what the sound's going to be like. No sound. All right. However, I watched the video and then about 20 seconds before the end, 2 end screens come up on the video. Do you want to know more about X or Y? Go to one picture or go to one video, click on one video or the other. And this can also be done in terms of structuring the lesson of, okay, well, this is the core video they watch. Are you still struggling? Click on the video on the left and it'll take them to a much more simplified version of that video. Have another crack. Do you reckon you want to test yourself? Click on the one on the right. Okay, and that'll take them to another video. As I said, that one there I don't do very often. That's a once in a blue moon one because it takes a while to set up. Okay. As I said, I do love Google. Another Google add-on, created by an American lady actually. This is an add-on that gets embedded into Google Form called Auto Mastery. So just so they'll do that form that I mentioned before where they do the multiple choice questions, and then you run this in that form, and you set a mark on what is considered a pass, what is considered, and because it's American, they use the word beginner, progressing, or extension, but it could be changed to structured, core, extended, whatever it is you use. You set the mark and say anything below, or anything above 5 is then going to get taken to extension. Anything below 5, they're going to be going towards the beginner thing. So if they get 4 out of 10, for example, all they'll get, and you can send them a video, so there's no shaming, there's no one kid going, I got an email saying that I failed my exam or failed a quiz. It's basically, your next assignment is, and then it just sends them a link. So the kids don't really think, I failed, it's just, I've been sent to this website as opposed to that website. So that's an American one. So it does use different terms, I guess, but the idea is still there. And that's an add-on you put into your Google form, not a spreadsheet, not your Google Docs, but the actual form itself. As far as I know, it doesn't work with Microsoft Forms, so if you do use if you're a Microsoft school, it doesn't really work at the moment yet. So I do apologise for that. This is something I created a while ago, and this is one of my favourite things. Anyone know about Gridiron? American football, one of my favourite sports ever, even though my team's a bit shocking. So I invented that 9 years ago. I was doing, this is when I started my prac as a teacher at an all-boys school in southwest Sydney, which is all concrete, very mixed socioeconomic status, middle, upper, lower, middle class, sort of working parents, that sort of stuff. So the boys were really hard to engage. So I thought, well, how do I get blooms into something they can do, which is love sport, okay? So if you're not familiar with gridiron field's 100 yards, 100 yards long, and it's broken up into, and again, if you come into my, the one about gifted and talent, I'm going to sort of sidebar into this very briefly. Morning, John. In time to talk about gridiron.
Gridiron?
Yeah. Do you follow?
I do.
Who's your team?
Broncos.
That was a shame on the weekend, wasn't it? Or the other day, wasn't it? Yeah. No, well, I'll go for the Cowboys, John, so equally not as good.
Yeah.
So gridiron field's 100 yards long, obviously broken into 10-yard segments. And the aim is for the offensive team to move the ball up the field and score. That's the aim, okay, in a very simplistic game. Okay, and it does this in 10-yard blocks. So 10 yards, if they make that 10-yard minimum, they can move on to another 10 yards and have about 4 attempts or downs to reach that 10-yard. Am I explaining it well enough, John? They have 4 attempts or downs to make that 10-yard. They get that 10-yard minimum. Within those 4 attempts, they can try again for another 4 attempts for another 10 yards. Okay? It looks like that. So what I've done is I've embedded this as into balloons. Okay, and I found the boys were very, very receptive to this, particularly when you bring an actual ball in into the class. Obviously, 9 years ago, the WHS was a little bit different. So you might need to go out into an open field as opposed to in a room, for example. But bringing an actual ball in is good. It's a good sort of behaviour management tool as well, sort of quietly as well in terms of bless you, who has the ball and whatever. So it's very suited to blooms. You can use it as an individual whole class tool, and again, it helps the kids progress in that sort of gradual release model of going from one end of the field through to basically that independent phase of the much more higher order skill as well down the end. Okay, so how it does that, for example, what I did then, and I still continue to do, is place a question, based on blooms within each sort of 10-yard sort of segment. Okay. So obviously, because there's 6 levels of blooms and there's 10 segments, you can use a few more if you want to sort of stretch them a bit more in the higher end as opposed to the lower end. And they work from that lower end to the higher order question. So they can slowly progress. So for example, in geography, looking at natural hazards, so identify the hazards that Australia can get affected by the most. Very low level knowledge. Okay, and they slowly move their way up, and this is using the I think this is still using the old version of Blooms when they didn't revise it and called Create something else. I think Create's now Make or something. It's the same thing. But they slowly work their way up in that gradual sort of manner. And the thing is that because they've got 4 attempts to reach a 10-yard in a game of football, you use them as an assessment tool as well. So the kids have 4 downs. The kids have 4 attempts to make that little 10-yard block. And that's a really great formative tool here in terms of, they answer it correctly, they move to the next 10-yard block, okay, which is slightly more difficult. They're slowly building that knowledge. They need to get to the end to score that touchdown at the end. So in reality, students can have 4 attempts getting question correct, makes a great formative assessment tool. And the amount of downs or attempts it takes a student to reach the next level really is good to sort of have a different level of interventions here in terms of, okay, well, which structured work do I need to provide? If they're really struggling down the bottom end, what scaffolds can I put in to help them get to that next level? Or if they are sort of going through one, only takes them one attempt to get everything right, okay, well, what more enriching work can I then offer this student right at the end then? So really good behaviour management really kept the boys engaged because it included sport, physical tactile ball if you're able to bring one in as well. And as I said, it's a great formative tool. Really worked well to sort of figure out, okay, well, they've done that pre-work as well at home. Now we can do something. I wouldn't call this gamifying. It's a very low level. But I found this work really, really well in terms of that thing. And that is the end.